This Fusion table saw, as you can see, makes great cuts. It has rips, cross cuts, miters, bevels. It's got great storage for the fins. It's even got a place for your wrenches, and those go right down here on the side of the saw. There's a handy little hook right there for that. Now, it wouldn't be a great table saw unless there was a few options there for it. And of course, you've got options in terms of blades. The blade that comes on it is to get you up and running. We carry a wide assortment of blades at Laguna Tools, and we firmly believe that the best quality power tools get their best when they're outfitted with the best blades. And so you can choose rip blades, cross-cut blades, and dado blades. Give us a call. We can walk through that with you, or go into your local retailer and they can direct you in the right direction. There's also a few other features that are available for the saw. A 50-inch rip capacity, or 52-inch rip extension, I should say, and also a 220-volt option. Let's have a look at those. Now, the Fusion table saw is a 110-volt saw. It's got a standard plug on it. It has a 110-volt switch and a 110-volt motor. The motor happens to be a dual voltage motor. That means it's a 110 and 220-volt motor. And you can actually change your saw from the 110-volt over to the 220. In order to do that, you'll need to replace the switch with a 220-volt switch. This one has got the correct plug for 220-volt. Inside it's got the correct electrical mechanisms for 220-volt, and that'll simply be replaced on the front of the saw, and these power wires will go into the motor. And so that's one thing that you need. The other item that you need is the reset switch, and this is the reset switch that we saw inside the cabinet and on the little box that mounts to the motor. This is the reset switch that you push if you need to reset the motor breaker. And this also needs to be replaced because this is a 220-volt reset switch. These are the two parts that you need to purchase separately and install in order to convert your saw to a 220-volt operation. Now, the Fusion table saw in its standard configuration has a 36-inch rip fence, and that might be adequate for most of the projects that you're doing. And you can see that it's pretty handy and it's well appointed. But in certain cases, if you're doing full sheets of plywood or larger projects, you may want to have a longer rip fence and a little bit more support. So Laguna offers a support table and a fence that goes out to 52 inches. It's comprised of two boxes. First one you've got is the table assembly right here that has the table, and then you've got the long rails, which are in the second box right here. Let's go ahead and open these boxes up and have a look at these components. Here's the legs. Here's the table. Here's the other leg. And before we throw this box away, let's make sure that get the hardware package out. We'll set that to the side, throw our box away. Now, the hardware bag has got the leveling feet, and those will screw right into the bottom of each legs. They already have the insert plugged into the bottom, and at the top we've got these little T-brackets that'll go to the bottom brackets on the table, and all the hardware for mounting these is located inside the bag. On the bottom side of the table, you'll see the brackets that we spoke of, and these will bolt onto the fence rails. Let's grab our fence rail, slide it forward, and cut it open. Okay, we've got another little hardware bag right here. This is the rear rail assembly, and the inner box will have the front rail assembly. Now, before you throw the outer box away, open up the end. There's a little compartment inside that has your hardware kit for the fence rail. Now that this box is empty, we can set it out of the way and clear up our workspace. Now, the front rail is in this little sleeve. This should slide right out the end. Let's take the outer sleeve off and have a look at the rail. And there's our solid fence rail. Now, we've gone ahead and removed the 36-inch fence rails, both the front and rear rails from the saw. We've left the fasteners up in the front rail here. We've left them loose, and that'll allow us to slide on the 52-inch rip fence. Let's go ahead and grab the fence. and slide it in place. Carefully slide the fence over the square shouldered bolts. Okay, now we've got the fence rail slid in place. Sometimes that's a little bit easier if you have two people. I'm going to line up this end just like we did the last one, and you can see how much extension we have beyond the edge of the table saw itself, and that area will drop in the support table. Let's go ahead and get the rear rail installed just like we did the two-part. It'll just be a single piece on the back. Now that we've got the front and rear rails installed and leveled off on the saw here, let's go ahead and put some fasteners in. We'll drop the table on, we'll bolt the legs on, and we can use our 52-inch rib fence. We'll take the two square-headed bolts that we used to mount the front rail before and slide them in the end and bring these on down. Then the table is going to rest on these bolts. On the back side, we're going to go ahead and use the Allen-headed cap screws, and we'll do the same thing that we did on the back side. We'll bring two in for the table. And your table is actually going to rest on these. I like to preload the fasteners on this if I can and leave them really loose, leave plenty of slop right here. That way they don't fall out on the floor and you don't have to chase these down. So we'll go ahead and get those nuts installed right there. And we'll do the same on the back. A washer and a nut. One. Once they're installed, pull the washer and the nut to the end so that you've got plenty of shoulder on these bolts. Way the table will drop on. Now this is a good area to have someone help spot the table for you. You're going to line the tabs up on the table and they're going to slide over these bolts. Let's grab our table and let's bring it and set it down this place. If you don't have someone to help you out, take a tape measure and set these very carefully and try to align it that way. Take the tape measure, measure the distance between these right here, and it's just about 19 3/4. We'll make sure they're both the same. And they are. This is the rounded end. The rounded end is going to go toward the outside. The square end is going to go toward the table saw. And let's just drop this guy right in place there. On the front fasteners. Okay, so now that we have the table set in place, you can see that it's a nice smooth surface. It's got a low friction coating on it, and it's not going to get stained on you. This is a nice little table. What we'll want to do is, we've got the nuts on there. We're going to go through and tighten those down. Get them just finger tight, and then what you want to do is very carefully raise this up so that it matches the same height as your cast iron. We're going to go raise it up, and we'll tighten those bolts down right now. Okay. Now that we've got that tightened down, and again, that's a number 13 wrench that we're using on this one here. We're ready for the leg assembly right now. We've got our fasteners out here. Let's grab our two legs, and we'll bring those over. And before we bolt those on, we'll grab the threaded feet and the little leveling feet. Those have a nice little rubber pad on those. And what I like to do is I like to screw them in quite a ways in so that they're not in the way when we bolt them in place. That one's bottomed out. Let's grab the next one. Okay, and there's the second one. Now that we've got those run all the way in, I can put those on and then bring them out to level them. So we've got one leg. This will be our front leg. Let's grab our fasteners. We'll feed them into the T-slot into the end of the rail. And then the leg assembly will drop over those fasteners. And then of course we'll put our flat washers and then the nut assembly on these. Now with these still finger tight, I can position this leg up and down this rail any way I like. I'd like to have it further out, that way it gives me the maximum amount of support. If I've got a big heavy piece of wood up here, I want the support. And I really like to have it even with the back leg, so I can spot that, or I can pull a tape measure out here and set the front and back one there. Once those are in position, I'll go through, tighten this down with a wrench. I'll do the same here with the rear rail, and then I'll finally bring my leveling foot down and level this off. And we'll thread these out until they contact the ground. I like to put a little bit of a positive pressure on them. And that's fantastic. So now we've got the table installed, we've got the front rail installed, the rear rail installed, and the two legs, and everything is leveled off. A few little details: we need to put the end caps on here. Before we put the other end cap on that end, we need to slide the switch back in place, tighten that down, put the other end cap on there, and basically we're ready to roll. We'll readjust the fence rail here, and you can leave these front bolts loose and slide this back and forth until you get the tape scale set up. Okay. Now we've got the fence dropped in place. We've got the table on, we've got the extension rails on this one here. Now we can go through and rip 52-inch pieces, but we need to go through and make an adjustment. Bring your fence back up, drop it on the rail, and you can see it slides back and forth. We had it preset for the other rails, but what we will want to do is bring this over, and again, line up with the marks, make a cut, and then adjust the pointer tabs just to make sure that we've got the front rail dialed in. The difference on this rail is that we're going to be able to slide this entire rail forward and back to get these lined up. If for some reason you have any trouble lining your scales up on both the left and right hand side, we can send out a replacement scale there for you. These simply peel off and you can drop a new one right on there. Now there's a few adjustments you might need to make. One of them might be if this cut is perfectly at 45 and the degree marker is not, you'll go through and adjust the degree marker much as we adjusted the scale right here. It's simply a little screw, a Phillips head screw, loosening and adjusting the pointer. If this is off at all on the cut, we can actually go through and adjust that using these two holes right here. This one's for your 90 degrees and this is for your 45 degrees, and you'll see these in the owner's manual. It describes the adjustment. You take your Allen wrench and you can go through here and you can actually adjust the hard stop for both the 90 and 45 degrees, and that way when you go back and adjusting back and forth between those cuts, you can go up against those stops comfortably knowing that they're properly adjusted. And that's how you set those stops, right through these two holes right here. One of the great features about the Fusion table saw is that it has a built-in mobility kit. Simply loosen the lock knobs on the left-hand side of the saw, and that unlocks the wheels. Once those are unlocked, you can walk around to the opposite end, gently lift on the rails, and you'll see that your saw can be rolled and positioned anywhere in the shop quite easily. Once you have it positioned, go back and relock the wheels.